New Mexico territory, late summer, first light. The day opens like a thin scar, pale, tender, and honest about what cut it. Wind moves low along the ground, combing dust into ribbons that slide across warped boards and old nails. The town looks awake and tired at the same time, paint peeling around its eyes, breath caught somewhere between morning coffee and last night's sins. Doors hang on anxious hinges, a porch swing ticks without a rider. Somewhere, a kettle sings to no one. This is what survival looks like when it forgets to wash its face, a place both alive and rotting, the scent of yesterday still clinging to the air. She arrives so quietly it feels like the land already knew she was coming. The mare steps soft, not from weariness but because the hands on the reins have learned something harder than speed, hesitation, the wise kind that listens to the body before the mind gives it permission. Her grip breathes in and out, tightens, releases, then settles into a steadiness earned on other trails. The badge under her coat taps against bone with each stride, a small metallic heartbeat answering the larger one inside her chest. People notice, like people always do. They look from porch chairs through muslin curtains, over coffee cups they do not set down. Faces are older now, softer around the mouth, but the suspicion hasn't aged a day. The horse's hooves find the boards of the main street, and the sound goes hollow, as if the past is knocking from beneath the floor. She doesn't speak. No one does. Silence isn't absence here. It's agreement. The dust carries its own kind of murmur, and every bootprint remembers the weight that made it. Her shoulders stay square, not rigid, not proud, just accountable. The body has a way of telling the truth, even when the mouth chooses mercy. When fear rises, the throat narrows. When resolve returns, the shoulders widen. Today, her breath lengthens by inches, the nervous system loosening its grip one quiet exhale at a time. She passes the livery, a barber's striped pole that turns unevenly, a window where flour bags lean like tired men. Then she sees it, the charred frame of the old well. Not a ruin so much as a survivor that refuses to lie. Blackened timbers, iron ring half melted, the circle of stones holding an emptiness you can still feel with your hands. It stands exactly where her mother's voice used to echo at dusk, where laughter once came up with the water, where a child's tin cup lived on a nail. The frame is smaller now, or maybe she is bigger. Memory plays with scale, but the smell is the same. Sweet wood turned bitter, ash asleep in cracks, smoke that never left the boards and never will. She doesn't dismount. She lets the mare drift one slow arc around it, as if paying respects without asking it to remember her name. A door opens 3 buildings down. A man in a long coat pauses with his broom and watches the way her hand travels, from reins to coat to the shape of the star hidden beneath. He recognizes the map of movement more than the face, the way survival learns to keep a center of gravity near the heart. He looks away before she can catch him, sweeps at nothing, then at the same nothing again. The town rehearses its innocence with small rituals. Even guilt needs chores. Sunlight rises, thins, touches everything that can't hide. Splinters, fly specks, buckles, the small red thread at the edge of her cuff. She steadies at the end of the street, lifting her chin by the weight of it, not by pride. 20 years fold in on themselves, and then unfold again. Inside the skull, the past runs like a second river, quiet but strong, carving a canyon no map shows. The body knows this place even when the mind tries to name it new. The body remembers the angle of the wind the night the sky turned into fire. It remembers how smoke teaches the lungs to count differently. 1, hold. 2, hold. Wait for the rush of cool air that never came. Windows darken. A child's whisper travels beneath a door. On the far porch, 2 men change the subject the way men do, by talking louder about nothing at all. Her eyes lift to the ridge beyond town, the thin bite of mesa against sky. She used to race shadows there. She used to know each yucca by its tilt. Now the horizon looks like someone left the earth out overnight and it dried that way. She could turn the mare and leave without touching a single step. She could say that the road behind her has more use than the road ahead. But healing is not a straight line, and it isn't a circle either. It's a slow spiral. Close, closer, closest, until the center lets you hold it without burning. She guides the mare forward again. Not fast, just decided. The saddle leather answers with a small faithful creak. Her jaw unclenches. She tastes iron and dust and something almost sweet, like the memory of cornbread on a Sunday when the world was still simple enough to divide into hunger and full. As she passes the courthouse, a curtain lifts and falls. As she nears the mercantile, a hand lifts and stills. The town is an organism, and she is a touch near a wound. The reaction isn't hatred so much as recoil. the nervous system learning again what to do with an old pain walking on two legs. The mare's ears flick toward the well and then back to her. She taps the animal's neck once with 2 fingers. "Thank you, we're here." The message is as much for herself as for the horse. Her breath deepens. The badge, warm against her ribs, gathers light, then hides it again when the coat shifts. Each mark on that metal came from another town, another hard door, another long night. None of them were this one. It is possible to keep others safe and still be a stranger to your own ground. It is possible to save 100 lives and still owe 1 conversation to a burned circle of stones. A stray dog follows for 3 paces, then thinks better of it. A church bell coughs once, more throat than sound. A single fly writes nonsense in the air and lands on the rail where the white paint is tired of pretending. She watches her hand as it loosens the reins, then gathers them again. Small acts, micro decisions, the everyday science of coming back to yourself. Name the sight, name the scent, name the place in the chest that tightens and the place in the belly that answers. Keep the breath slow, keep the eyes soft, let the ground remember you. When she finally stops, it is in front of the office with the warped glass and the gold letters that tried to turn law into decoration. Her reflection is a rumor. She studies it anyway because what we study learns to soften. Dust threads her hat brim. A faint line, almost a smile, has been mistaken for a scar and maybe is both. She touches the brim to the well, not in greeting, not in farewell, but in witness. The gesture is quiet enough to pass for nothing. It isn't nothing. Nothing doesn't bring heat to the throat or make the eyes sting without tears. No words yet, not from her, not from the town, only that hollow thud of hooves on boards, answering the old music of memory. Only that one smell, the ghost of wood smoke, that returns when the sunlight finds the right angle. She takes one more breath and lets it go longer than the one before, the way you do when you decide to live through what you're about to remember. Then she lifts her hand, places it flat over the badge and lets the silence say what language would only bruise. "I am back. I am not here to tear the past from the wood. I am here to touch it without burning." And for the first time in 20 years, the morning does not look away. The office holds last night's heat and the smell of ink. Ledgers sleep open on the desk, corners softened by years of hands that wrote what they could bear and folded shut what they could not. Light comes through the warped glass in uneven bands, laying stripes across the floorboards, across the map on the wall, across the chair where she does not sit. He looks up, and something old stirs behind his eyes, something he has trained to lie still. The current lawman weighing the sight of her badge against the memory of her as a barefoot girl. He lifts a cup halfway to his mouth and stops. Porcelain touches wood again. The small ring it leaves on the desk looks like a sealed promise that never met daylight. He tries for casual, the kind that buys time, but the hand betrays him. A coffee cup that trembles slightly before being set down on the desk. The sound is quiet and final, like a period at the end of a sentence no one wanted to write. Outside, a wagon wheel chirps once and keeps rolling. Inside, the nervous system does its ancient work. Heart quickens, throat tightens, breath stalls, then remembers the slow way back. He watches her the way a drought watches a cloud. Hope and fear asking the same question at once. The badge under her coat shows for a moment when the light lands right. A small flare, then shadow again. His jaw finds stillness. Her shoulders do the same. 2 bodies practicing regulation in a room that prefers secrets. She says nothing. He respects that. Silence has rules here. Years ago, when fire ran the edges of the town like a cruel seamstress, a younger version of this man stood where he stands now, counting men, not children, counting property, not names. He remembers a day he told himself help was coming and sat down to wait for his own courage. It did not arrive before nightfall, the unspoken deal. He will not ask why she's here if she doesn't ask why he never came back for them. It moves between them like a slow wind you only notice when it stops. He reaches for the ledger, finds the pencil, discovers he cannot hold it without pressing too hard. He sets it down as if it might break. There should be questions, jurisdiction, cause, intention. There should be lists, times, signatures. Instead, there is a single object on the corner of the desk, a tarnished deputy star from another year, kept like a myth he never earned. He nudges it away from the morning stripe of light, embarrassed by its shine. She watches the gesture the way one watches a stone sink, not surprised, not pleased, simply acknowledging gravity. When he finally speaks, the voice comes low, careful not to wake what they both brought into the room. Coffee. The word is not a question and not a kindness. It is a bridge no wider than a hand. He pauses, slides the cup toward her without looking up. She does not touch it. He understands. The steam rises between them like a memory that refuses to cool. He almost says her name, the one he remembers from schoolyard dust and evening chores, the one that belonged to a girl who ran faster than boys who learned to carry guns. He doesn't. Names belong to people who were protected by the mouths that said them. A fly salts the air with a small circle and is gone. Somewhere in the back, a clock forgets how to tick for 3 beats, then finds the rhythm again. He thinks of the paper he never filed, the statement he never took, the road he did not ride on the morning after. He thinks of men who later called themselves tired, or busy, or bound by orders, and how language can launder anything if you let it. His eyes lift at last, steady for once, and that is when it happens, the human crack in the wall he has built so carefully. A moment where his eyes betray both shame and relief. A man relieved to see she lived. A man ashamed to see she had to do it without him. Breath moves through the room like a soft train, in slow, out slower. Her hand settles flat over the coat where the badge rests, a gentle weight on metal, on bone, on old heat. He follows the movement the way one follows a prayer with the head, not the lips. For a second, the map on the wall matters. The line where the river bends, the small printed circle where her village used to be before the cartographer learned what erasure feels like in the wrist. He knows what she's capable of now, the steady work, the hard nights, the decisions no one clapped for. He also knows what this place is capable of. Both truths stand in the same thin sunlight. No charges are named, no promises are traded. The agreement holds. What is owed will not be spoken here, not yet, maybe never. He reaches for the cup again and doesn't drink. She inclines her head a fraction, not consent, not dismissal, just the dignity of a person who can carry a past without pressing it into someone else's hands. When she turns for the door, the floor gives a small wood sigh that he feels in his ribs. She pauses long enough for his nervous system to learn one more lesson. The body can take responsibility without swallowing blame. The door opens. Light shifts. Dust remembers how to dance. He watches her step back into morning and understands that some reckonings begin with nothing more dramatic than a calm exit and a cup left to cool. A widow leaving a wrapped loaf on the hitching post without knocking. She comes early when the street is mostly broom sound and breath, shawl pinned tight, eyes down in the careful manner of someone who keeps tenderness folded small. The loaf is still breathing heat through its cloth. She sets it where a hand can find it and not be seen doing so, then walks away with steps that apologize for making noise. No note, no name, only the soft print of flour on the cloth edge, a ghost of a palm that once needed, once waited, once believed in feeding as prayer. The air takes the steam and turns it into a ribbon that vanishes by the time a door opens upstairs. She doesn't eat it right away, keeps it on the table like a question. In the rented room, light falls in rectangles that shift and thin as morning earns its keep. She places the loaf in the middle of the scarred wood and lets it rest. The cloth holds a warmth that travels into her fingertips and up the arm like a slow, wordless blessing, but her body has rules older than hunger. The nervous system scans, sound, scent, shape, then story. Safety is a rhythm more than a place. She sits, hat on the peg, coat folded once, then once again, arranging the world into something gentle enough to breathe inside. The loaf waits and does not insist. The bread is still warm, but the gesture is older, maybe from a debt owed to her mother. The mind fetches a picture before she can tell it not to. Hands dark with flour, wrists strong, a laugh that rose with the dough and made the house feel taller. A face turns in lamplight and says nothing, because love did its talking with aprons and firewood, and a cup placed just so. Memory is not a film here. It is scent and heat, and the soft crackle of crust releasing steam. She feels the tug in the chest that comes when 2 times want to occupy the same chair. Her thumb rubs the knot of twine as if reading a name there. Kindness here feels like contraband, traded in shadows. The town keeps its back straight and its voice even, but goodness passes under doors like a secret. She knows how it works. A jar left on a step, a fence mended at night, a blanket folded on a chair that no one admits was empty yesterday. Mercy chooses the quiet route, so it can survive the day. She thinks of the widow's walk, that careful pace, the way a person can offer bread and apology in the same breath because love, too, is hunted by what men call order. Outside, a wheel squeals, and a rooster fails at confidence. Inside, the loaf keeps warming the table until the wood seems to exhale. She loosens the twine at last, not to eat, not yet, but to let the steam rise and name the room. The scent is simple. Yeast, browned crust, a hint of sweetness that could be honey or the memory of it, and it does what good scents do, teaches the body to trust the present without erasing the past. She breaks the loaf open and listens. The sound is small, alive, like frost giving way to water. A piece rests in her palm. She does not lift it to her mouth. She places it back, aligns both halves, and smooths the cloth as if tucking a child. There is a dignity in waiting. There is a dignity in letting a gift be a gift before it becomes a meal. Across the room, her badge catches a thin line of light and offers it back to the ceiling in a quiet flare. She thinks about exchange without ledger, how some things balance through echo instead of arithmetic. The widow's hands her mother's bread this morning's silence. She considers the paths grief takes when it wants to be useful. A loaf, a look, a thread sewn through someone else's torn day. The mind tries to file it. The heart refuses. The body says keep the cloth and bring it back clean. She nods at nothing, which is the same as saying yes to everything that matters. When noon leans through the glass, she wraps the bread once more, tight but not too tight, the way you hold a truth you won't force on anyone. The cloth has learned her warmth now and gives it back. She ties the twine with a knot her mother used on berry bundles, 2 turns, a pull, a pause, and feels that small, secret strength that comes from doing a thing the old way. Downstairs, the hitching post waits in the thin shade of the awning. She steps out with the loaf, sets it where it first appeared, then slides the twine beneath the rail so the wind won't argue. No words, no coin. Only a folded scrap of quiet placed carefully under the cloth corner, a single thread from her sleeve, pale as early light, left as proof that the gift reached a living hand. The street thinks it saw nothing. A boy runs past and never looks. A pair of men measure a plank and declare it short, yet the air feels altered by a difference too tender to name. She returns to the stairs, touches the newel post once, a small ritual for grounding, and lets the breath go long as she climbs. In the room, the table holds the absence of a loaf, the way a body holds the shape of a hug after it ends. She sits in the empty space and feels full. Hunger will come later. Work will come sooner. But for one measured minute, her chest loosens, her jaw softens, and the stern voice inside steps back to make room for another one, the one that says without sound, keep what is clean clean, return what is given better. Let kindness move the way water moves, quiet, persistent, finding a way through even the hardest ground. The doors breathe when she enters, wood sighing on tired hinges, the kind of sound a place makes when it remembers. The room is a small geography of habits, hymnals with bent corners, a row of hats with their brims turned toward heaven, light climbing the plank walls in quiet ladders, the preacher delivering words about forgiveness without looking at her. His voice is practiced mercy, smooth where it needs to be smooth, rough where a man wants to sound like weather. He threads scripture through the air like wire, pulls it tight, lets it hum, but the line refuses to cross the narrow space that holds her. He looks everywhere else. Rafters, windows, the curve of a child's crown, and nowhere her eyes might be. The congregation rocks gently, as if memory were a pew and agreement a cradle, a rusted pendant hanging on the pulpit. She knows it once belonged to her sister. It swings when his palm grazes the wood, a small arc of iron that catches the sun and gives it back as a bruise-colored glint. The sight lifts a door inside her that she keeps mostly shut. She doesn't open it. She stands near it and listens. The mind offers a map without asking, a hand-me-down chain, a girl's laugh on a road lined with rabbit brush, a thumb smoothing the charm before chores. Objects keep better records than men do. The pendant holds smoke in its paws. It knows whose neck it warmed, whose throat learned to sing around it, who was taken from under a sky that looked this same pale, forgiving blue. How an entire congregation can murmur amen, yet keep their backs straight against her. The sound arrives in one soft wave, a single muscle flexing to prove it still belongs to itself. Not a head turns, not a shoulder loosens. The amen has polish, it has form, it does not have room. She watches spines align with the wooden slats as if taught by a carpenter who measured holiness in angles. Bodies speak first. Belief tries to keep up. A woman fingers a ribbon. A man polishes a knuckle on a wedding band. A boy studies the dust like it might spell a kinder answer. Small movements declare a shared intention. Hold the line. Keep history out of the blood. The air tastes of varnish and old oranges. Her breath stays slow, counted, a discipline learned in other rooms where the power wore uniforms and called its fear duty. The preacher clears his throat and shifts from chapter to story, from parable to anecdote he has sharpened with repetition. He draws a circle with his hand in the air, as if lassoing an invisible guilt and dragging it close enough to bless. He doesn't name her people, he doesn't name the fire, but he names forgiveness until the word thins to lace, pretty and strong until wet. She feels the body answer the way bodies do when a truth is mentioned, without being invited to sit. Stomach tight, jaw balanced, shoulders spreading a fraction to make room for breath. Regulation is not surrender. It is the choice not to burn again for someone else's comfort. The pendant swings, stops, swings again. The pulpit bears old knife nicks that no one sanded out, the kind men leave when they are certain they will outlive the marks they make. She wonders briefly whether the preacher took the charm as a keepsake, a relic or a warning. The question settles in her ribs and does not demand an answer. Even grief learns humility when it stands in a room where the floor has memorized the weight of so many knees. She looks at the window, where the light has become the color of cooled ash, and notices that somewhere a sparrow is building with pieces no one else wanted. A sermon meant for her ears, but not her heart. The sentences travel the distance to her chair and lay themselves at her boots like obedient dogs that do not know her scent. She does not kick them away. She does not claim them. She lets them be what they are. Words arranged to sound like water, offered by a man who will not meet the eyes of the river he names. The silence between them has its own doctrine, older than any book. She rises before the benediction finds its ending, and the air shifts as if a door opened where there is no door. No one stops her. No one speaks. When she passes the aisle where the children sit, a little girl lifts her face, not in fear, not in admiration, just in recognition, the quiet knowledge that sometimes the holiest thing a person can do is hold her own gaze steady and leave without taking the room's permission with her. The sunlight at the threshold is clean. She steps into it and lets the breath go all the way to the bottom, where faith is less a word than a practice. Stand, witness, do not lie. In a dim saloon corner, an old ranch hand confesses the name of the man who lit the first torch. The room wears darkness like an old coat, stitched with lantern light and the low scrape of a broom along warped planks. The piano sleeps with its teeth showing. Glasses knock softly as if someone were asking for permission to speak. She chooses the shadowed table against the wall where a nail once lived, a small scar at shoulder height. The ranch hand arrives without ceremony, hat in both hands, the way a man enters a room where truth already sits. His breath smells of wintergreen and worry, and when he pulls the chair back, the sound is almost kind. The sound of rain on the roof growing heavier as he speaks, as if covering his voice. It begins as a polite tap, then gathers itself into a steady drumming that tucks the world in close. He leans toward it like a confessional window, and the rain answers with more rain, a blanket thrown over names as old as splinters. His mouth finds the syllables and lets them go, not as rumor, not as theater, just as weight finally placed on the ground. The first name lands between them and does not bounce. Lightning waits its turn somewhere far off, not for drama, but to give the pauses a place to stand. She learns the torchbearer didn't act alone. The order came from someone still in town. The sentence arrives slow, careful with its feet, the way a truth walks after stumbling for years. Her body hears it before her mind can file it, a narrow tightening under the ribs, a warmth in the throat, the old signal that says, be still and stay. Breath lengthens on purpose. The saloon tilts toward silence. Even the broom stops to listen. He does not say the second name twice. He doesn't have to. The rain repeats it by being louder, by choosing that exact moment to run wild along the eaves, as if water knows how to shield a confession without washing it clean. He slides a coin across the table, saying it once belonged to her father. It travels the width of the wood with a slow, scraping hush and comes to rest under the lamplight, where old scratches shine like rivers seen from a cliff. She does not touch it right away. Metal remembers skin. Her palm refuses to ask it to speak before it is ready. The coin bears a shallow nick near the edge, the kind made by a promise kept too hard. She can feel her mother's voice moving through the memory of that nick, a quiet murmur at the end of long days. Hold what is yours, let go what burns. The ranch hand studies the rim of his glass as if a map were etched there. The lines around his eyes look carved, not wrinkled. When he talks of that night, he does not use fire as an excuse for the men who carried it. He names horses, distances, the angle of a torch held wrong by a boy who wanted to be a man and learned too late what manhood costs the world. He admits where he stood. He names where he did not. Language can launder anything, but he leaves the stains where they belong. His voice finds a mercy not for himself, but for the facts. He lets them be heavy in the chairs they take. The roof settles. The rain adds a low harmony to the lantern's breath. She sets a fingertip on the coin and feels how cold wakes the skin's small nerves into a choir. Regulation arrives like a steady hand at the base of the skull. Shoulders widen by a quiet inch. Jaw softens. The parasympathetic hymn hums its old song, inhale through the bones, exhale through the floor. She thinks of all the rooms where she has done this work, frontier kitchens, jail corridors, empty porches, teaching the body not to rush grief into rage, just to feel like time moved. Here, now, she gives the moment the dignity of slowness. He speaks of the order giver with a care that says he understands how power hides inside ordinary clothes, a banker's pen, a churchman's ring, a foreman's ledger. He doesn't point toward the door or the street or the big house on the hill. He points toward the part of a town where a man can wave from his porch and have a road appear under his feet without touching a shovel. The room seems to lean, then straighten, as if the building itself chose not to take sides. The piano coughs once and returns to sleep. Someone laughs at the bar 3 beats too loud. She finally closes her palm over the coin. Heat moves into it from her skin, not to claim, not to forgive, but to make a circle that was left open too long. The metal grows less foreign under her touch, less like a relic and more like a hinge. She does not put it in her pocket. She does not push it back. She lets it live between hand and wood, a held breath made of copper and stories. Memory shows her a fragment, her father counting out prices for seed and salt, the edge of that same coin catching sunlight as if saving a small flame for later. She anchors to the rhythm of the rain and lets the picture pass through without begging it to stay. The ranch hand's eyes glisten but do not break. If he says sorry, it will be to the roof, not to her. Instead, he pushes a matchbox into the lantern's light, no message inside, just old sulfur and the smell of road dust, and whispers that some nights he dreams the torches go out easily, like the dreams would let him change the angle of yesterday just by waking. He does not ask for absolution. He asks for a kind of truth that doesn't require witnesses to become real. She answers with silence that holds, not silence that punishes. It is the most generous thing she can spare and still keep herself whole. When she stands, the chair gives a planky groan that feels honest. The rain thins, as if the sky has said what it needed to say. She leaves a folded piece of cloth on the table, no symbol announced, no debt invoked, just a square of clean, a human counterweight to what dirt can do. The coin travels with her hand as far as the door, then rests again on the table face up, catching one more breath of lantern light before the dark takes the room back. Outside, the puddles receive the street lamps one trembling circle at a time. She steps into that soft-lit wet and lets the night close around her like a coat that finally fits. She camps on the edge of the prairie, close enough to see the town lights fade. The land settles around her like a shawl, thin in places, strong where it counts. Grass whispers against her boots, a dry music that remembers rain. She loosens the saddle and lets the mare drink from a shallow pan, the metal ringing softly when hoof nudges rim. No large fire, only a thumb-high flame, trained and careful, the size a person keeps when she is not hiding, but also not trying to be found. The horizon holds its line. In the far distance, windows blink and go dark one by one, as if the town were a tired animal closing its eyes in pieces. She waits for the body to agree with the quiet. It takes time. The body always asks for time. The wind carries scents from the mesquite trees, the same as the night of the fire. Not smoke, not yet. Just that green, bitter sweetness that turns memory into water and then into stone again. Smell is an honest witness. It does not argue. It introduces. Heat, pressed into bark. Sap that learned to endure. A moth flutters through the small cone of light and leaves, a brief white thought with wings. She rubs the mare's neck and feels the animal's calm travel into her palm, along the forearm, into the chest. It is a simple exchange, and it works better than any sentence she could throw at her own nerves. Long inhale, longer exhale. The earth listens and lifts a little under her spine when she sits. Her fingers trace the grooves of her badge, each mark a different battle, none of them this one. She studies the metal as if it were a map drawn in scars. A scratch near the edge from a winter jailhouse where the lock stuck, a shallow dent from a thrown bottle that missed its intended lesson, a fine, almost pretty line from a fence she climbed when a girl hid behind it and would not come out until every man turned his back. She holds the badge the way people hold photographs they refuse to look at straight on, tilted with respect. Then she presses it to her sternum and lets its cool circle the heat there, a small ritual learned on the road, object to body, body to ground, ground to sky. The circle steadies what language would only rattle. Sleep doesn't come, only the slow drift of stars moving east. The night is patient with her impatience. Coyotes place their voices at the far edges and leave space in the middle for breathing. Crickets count. The flame folds into coal and then into a red thought. She lies back on the bedroll and watches the heavens slide like a great quiet river. Time becomes the size of pulse. Thought becomes the size of dust. She lets memories arrive the way clouds do. No schedule, no apology. Hands bringing water to a well that no longer stands. A sister's pendant, catching sun. A father's coin rolling across a table into a calloused palm. She doesn't chase them. She lets them sit where they land. The nervous system takes the hint. A chill gathers, and she pulls the coat closer. Inside the pocket, cloth brushes knuckle, a small thing she found in daylight and did not name out loud. Not luck, not proof, just a remnant that knew how to wait. She holds it without looking and feels the thread hum against her skin like a living string. Some keepsakes ask to be hidden, some ask to be shown. This one asks to be placed where air moves and weather tells the truth. Not tonight. Soon. She returns it to darkness and keeps her hand there a moment longer, palm over pocket, pocket over rib, rib over heart that has learned the work of staying. Breath learns the ground, in through the nose, down past the throat's old armor, into the belly where softness has the last word. Out through lips barely open, a nurse's shush made for no one and for everything. She names the anchors in her head, not as orders, not as tricks, just as places to stand. The sound of the mare chewing, the weight of the badge, the smell of mesquite, the small warmth left where the fire used to be. Regulation is a simple kindness offered to the animal inside the human. It is not forgetting. It is not surrender. It is a decision to carry the truth without letting it tear the hands that carry it. Clouds thin and show more stars. The road through the dark looks almost blue, a ribbon laid down by someone who understood how travelers believe in lines. She thinks about the old men who set orders in motion and returned home in time for supper, how power can be so quiet it sounds like manners. She thinks about the preacher who could not meet her eyes, and the congregation that rocked together as if rocking were confession. She thinks about the sheriff's coffee ring and the noise a cup makes when a man decides to stop pretending his hand is steady. The thoughts come and go. The body stays. The body, stubborn and faithful, keeps choosing the ground. Wind changes direction. Somewhere a gate taps its post with the touch of a ghost. She sits up and rests her forearms on her knees, the coat falling open enough that night air greets the badge again. A shooting star tears a short seam and is gone. She doesn't take it as sign or omen. She takes it as weather. Light passing through, energy finding a way. Around the campsite, the circle of crushed grass marks where she decided to be of this place for a little while. The circle looks like a question and an answer, each taking a turn. She feeds the coal one last thread of dry grass and lets the glow breathe, no bigger than a cupped hand. Tomorrow will require the weight of her boots and the steadiness of her mouth. Tomorrow will ask her to see a desk and a man and an old ledger without confusing any of them for justice. Tonight asks less. Tonight asks for a spine that lengthens on the exhale, a jaw that remembers it can soften without giving anything away, a heart that can hold two truths at once, the child who ran, the woman who returned. The sky accepts the offering and keeps sliding east, star by star, as if to say that moving on is not a single stride, but a series of almost stillnesses the world mistakes for rest. When dawn's first grey loosens the black from the grass, she stands and rubs the mare's forehead until the animal leans into the hand. A bird tries 3 notes and decides to keep the rest. She stamps out the last red breath of the fire and watches the smoke lift straight up, thin as a vow. The town's edge begins to glow. She waits a breath longer than necessary, then another, teaching the body to leave slowly, teaching the past to stay put without force. The day will be what it is. The night gives her back to it with a gentleness that doesn't announce itself, the kind that works, the kind that lasts. Before dawn, she saddles the horse without tying the bedroll, not planning to stay. The light is a thin idea on the horizon, more promise than proof, and the air has that clean metallic taste that makes breath sit up straighter in the chest. Leather whispers under her hands, buckles answer with soft clicks that sound like decisions learning to speak. The mare shifts once, then stills, reading the steadiness in her posture. Nearby, the ashes of last night offer one last invisible warmth, the kind that lives in memory rather than in flame. Boots find stirrups by feel. Shoulders soften a fraction. Not surrender, not fatigue, just the body's way of telling truth without words. A piece of fabric folded into her coat pocket, a remnant from her mother's dress found in the rubble yesterday. She touches it, and the thread answers with the quiet hum of something that remembers being held. The cloth is lighter than it looks, softened by time, ash-scented and stubborn, the way love is stubborn. Her thumb follows a seam that still knows how to keep edges from fraying. In that small ritual, finger to hem, breath to chest, she feels a line stretch between the woman who once tied this dress to a clothesline and the woman who now knots it to herself for weather. No magic, no omen, just fabric practiced at surviving, asking to be placed where wind can tell the truth. Not yet. Soon. The pocket closes. The promise doesn't. She guides the mare along the empty street, passing shutters that dream of hands and a sign that creaks a hymn it learned from storms. The town hasn't woken into its noise, only into its listening. A dog lifts its head and decides against a bark. Her breath leaves small ghosts that follow and then forget. She slows at the corner where the boards remember her boots from years ago, where the grain in the wood still holds the outline of a girl who had to run. The outline is smaller now, her stride is longer. Scale bends around grief and then straightens when the nervous system has done its work. Inhale, hold, exhale. Let the ground take some of it. She walks past the sheriff's office, leaves something on his desk. Not a note, not a threat. The door opens on a low hinge cry and closes with a courtesy the room doesn't deserve. Inside, morning finds the ledger where it always sleeps, and the cup with its dried ring of yesterday's permission. She sets a small blackened stone from the well's broken circle on the open page. It is warm from her palm, cold from the night, honest from the ground. No message rides with it. The weight is its own language. She places the stone in the center of the empty line where a name would go and lets silence sign for her. Then the door learns her shoulder again, and the hall takes back the sound of boots that do not hurry. Back outside, the street is thinner, colder, truer. She turns the mare toward the ridge and listens for the old flinch in the body. It doesn't come. Something else does. That low, practical peace that follows a completed movement. It isn't joy. It isn't sorrow. It is the space a soul needs when it puts down a sack it has carried too far. A window blinks awake. A child coughs. A rooster decides to negotiate with the light. She feels the fabric in her pocket like a heartbeat that has learned a new, steadier drum. The plan is plain as bread. Ride to the well, tie what needs tying, leave what doesn't belong to her anymore with those who kept it. The mind tries to make a speech. The breath declines. She passes the mercantile. A broom moves in slow arcs, careful not to make judgments out of dust. She passes the church. The pendant on the pulpit is out of sight, but its memory lifts like a small bird in her throat and then finds a branch elsewhere. The wind carries mesquite and distance. She rides with it, body and saddle agreeing on pace. Behind her, footsteps begin to invent the day. Ahead, the ridge lightens, then opens. Her hand rests over her badge without hiding it. The star has its own weather, cold when it needs clarity, warm when it needs courage. She lets it be both. The decision feels less like revenge, more like closing a door she's been carrying for 2 decades. Doors can live inside a person. They can take up the good rooms and make the windows sting. They can swing in storms that have already passed and make the bed shake like a fever. This one has hinges greased with ash and a latch that learned to stick. She does not slam it. She does not lock it. She sets it gently into its frame and steps back until the sound of it being done reaches the rest of her. Breath moves easier afterwards, like a river finding a channel it didn't know it still had. She looks once over her shoulder, not to weigh, not to wish, but to witness what morning looks like when a burden changes hands. Then the mare takes the slope, the sky takes on color, and the ground, faithful as always, agrees to carry what comes next. The town wakes to find her gone, but something has shifted in its air. Morning light moves through the alleys like a careful hand, touching barrels, hitching rails, a chipped enamel basin that holds last night's rain. Doors open with the soft complaint of wood remembering. A boy runs after a stray dog and stops where the street meets the wind, puzzled by a feeling he cannot name. Even the dust seems less certain of where to settle, as if it too sensed a weight being put down somewhere just out of sight. On the fence post outside the old well, the fabric from her mother's dress flutters in the wind. A flag without a country. The cloth lifts and leans, then lifts again, speaking in a language before words. The charred frame keeps its vigil, black timbers holding a square of sky like a quiet picture that refuses to fade. People pass with their eyes lowered, then raised, then lowered once more, as if the body were rehearsing humility and courage in the same breath. No one touches the fabric. Respect, fear, gratitude. Each names it something different and leaves it be. The widow pauses in her doorway, shawl caught on a nail, gaze fixed on the flicker of color at the well. She is not surprised and does not smile. Instead, she stands very still, as if stillness could bless as surely as hands can. Across the street, a broom leans where it fell. The sound of sweeping has not yet learned the morning's new measure. Farther along, the barber's pole turns its tired red and white and seems, for a moment, to understand blood and bandage better than any sermon. Inside the sheriff's office, the desk holds the book open to its blank line. The sheriff sits with the item she left, staring at it as if it could speak. The blackened stone rests on the ledger like a small grounded word no one taught him how to pronounce. He reaches for it, stops, lets the hand hover above its patient weight. Around him, the room waits the way rooms do when a man is about to learn something true in a quiet way. The coffee is cold, the pencil is sharp. He closes the ledger without writing and sets the stone on top, a paperweight for a page no longer pretending to need ink. Across town, a bell coughs itself awake. In the sanctuary's thin echo, voices gather and knit their familiar fabric. Call, response, the rise and fall of practiced faith. The preacher pauses mid-sermon, looking toward the horizon. The sentence in his mouth unthreads itself and drifts into the rafters where swallows make something useful of loose ends. The pulpit looks larger without his hands on it. The pendant he wears today is plain, and he fingers it without meaning to. He does not name what he feels. He lets the silence answer in the spaces between his ribs. The congregation shifts, unsure if this is part of the lesson or the lesson itself. A wagon rolls past the livery, wheels murmuring an old road song. Children discover their own footprints in fresh dust and walk them backward until laughter interrupts the experiment. The fabric at the well keeps its soft conversation with the wind. A lark lands on the rail, considers the cloth and lifts again, as if even birds recognize a threshold when they see one. In a second-floor window, a curtain hesitates, then rests, and the room behind it learns daylight, as if for the first time. Out beyond the ridge, a figure on a small rise becomes no more than the idea of a rider, then only the patience of a trail, then nothing the eye can claim. The mare's prints stitch the earth with an even hand, no hurry, no last look, just the ordinary rhythm of a life continuing. Where the prints meet harder ground, the story doesn't stop. It goes quiet, the way streams do under limestone, carrying what matters where surface cannot see. In town, shoulders drop a fraction. The nervous system of a place takes one long breath. The sheriff moves the stone to the window and sets it where light can hold it a while. The ledger remains closed. He sits and waits for the next right small thing to rise. Across the street, the widow rescues her shawl from the nail and arranges it so it won't snag again. At the church, the preacher folds his notes and lets the last hymn stand on its own feet. The boy and the dog find a new game that doesn't chase anything away. Wind lifts the fabric once more and lays it down gently, like a hand smoothing hair from a sleeping brow. No proclamation follows, no rider gallops in with news. The day simply unfolds with the added fact of a tenderness that chose to show its face. Some debts remain unspoken, some truths move into different rooms. The question left behind, was justice served, or was it only the weight of memory changing hands?